Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty on the beat. Mike and Marty. Mike and Marty.
Hello, Bellows Falls and Keene, and welcome to The Feed. It's Mike and Marty. Today we're joined by Michele Boslund and Mustapha Tucker from Compass School and from the state legislature.
Hello.
Hello. And we're going to be talking about the state of the state mushroom.
I love alliteration.
I love alliteration too. So, Mustapha, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a
for
little
having me.
bit about yourself.
About myself.
Yeah, like
So,
where are you from? And-
I live in Queechee, Vermont, and I have a brother and I have my mom, and we have a couple pets.
and you go to school in Bellows Falls.
I
right?
do. I
Yeah.
go to school at Compass.
Oh, and then you guys are working on a project this semester. Well, I'll ask you that. How long will this project be that you're working on?
The state mushroom.
Yeah.
So I believe it has to pass through the Senate, and then does it have to be? Then it has to be signed with the governor, right? So
And you've been to the House already.
yeah, I testified at the State House for the Committee of Agriculture in
Oh,
front of
neat.
them. So
So,
And now you're gonna. Oh, go ahead.
I was just
sorry.
gonna say, so let's back up a little bit. How did this all come about? Like, did this start at the beginning of the school year? Had you been talking about it like for a while, or how did it come about that you guys were gonna help to designate the state mushroom?
Maybe I should start with
Yeah.
the answer to that.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm in the state legislature and state legislator, and I also am a teacher. And so I've done a lot of classroom visits as a legislator. And when I do, one of the things that I've done as sort of like a sample democracy experiment is we have the kids pick a state ice cream. And so they generate ideas, and then they do debate, and then they do a voice vote, and sometimes we do division.
Yeah.
And then in the end, we're like, okay, so this is how the process would work. So I've done that probably 7 or 8 times. And last spring, the last time I did that, I thought, I would like to actually have this experiment go farther in the process, like actually pick something that if we really were excited about it, we could move forward and see if we could move it all the way through the legislature
That's
and let
nice,
the students
yeah.
experience how does a bill become a law.
Right.
And so my first thought, I'm a forager, and my first thought was, do we have a state mushroom? And so when I looked it up, we don't. We have 23 state symbols, but we don't have a state mushroom. And I wanted to have a spectrum of ages. So I contacted 3 schools, one of them an elementary school, and one middle school got back to me. And so that's what we went with. And so that was in November and December.
Yeah.
I did the initial visits.
yeah.
And then, actually, Mustapha can talk about some of this part.
Yeah, so that so when Michele came to visit us the first time, we talked about like a state mushroom, like the idea of having a state mushroom, and like we were just like, oh, if this were to like actually be a thing, which one would you want? Like we weren't actually to the point like this is gonna happen, period. So we kind of just went through like a list of mushrooms, like, so we thought that we were like, oh, we should have like a unique one, and then we're like, oh, but we should make it something that like should be common so people can go out in the woods and find it, like if you like foraging. And people were like, oh, we should have something that's really cool, like the jack-o'-lantern, which is poisonous. And we're,
Most
I was
students were
gonna
like,
say,
no, we don't like
probably
that.
yeah, we're like,
the best
no,
state mushroom.
we're like, no, we don't want a poisonous mushroom
It
to
glows
be our
in the
state
dark,
mushroom.
which is pretty exciting.
yeah.
But
It's
poison,
really
they
cool,
were. They
yeah.
actually, the idea came up, and people were like, nah, we're not doing poison.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we presented a variety of ideas about mushrooms
Yeah.
and like what a mushroom could be and how a mushroom would work as a symbol, and then the students chose. So
Yeah.
basically the process of sort of debating and discussing, and some students really wanted one and some students really wanted another, and we did multiple rounds of voting.
I was just gonna say, so that it in itself, like people had to lobby, right, for their mushroom.
Yeah.
And some people were disappointed, and I said, you know what, this is how it is in the real legislature.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really want something, and it doesn't come out the way you want.
because like a few people like wanted hen of the woods, I think it was,
Yeah, that's a
and
real
then
popular mushroom.
and then like the others wanted like lion's mane, and I think bear's head tooth wasn't actually on our original list.
Oh, interesting.
It
So
came
Interesting.
through on the second, in the second
Yeah,
tier.
it, like when the first time we voted, I believe, for either hen of the woods
No, it was lion's mane.
or I believe, because like lion's mane was the first one, but hen of the woods had a couple votes.
Yeah.
Um,
But basically what we found was one of the things that students wanted was they wanted a mushroom that could be both cultivated, so you could grow it at home, or a small grower could
Yeah.
grow them and sell them, but they also wanted something you could find in the woods that grew naturally in our climate. And lion's mane is like the cousin of bear's head
they
tooth.
look very similar.
But in
Yeah.
our climate, it doesn't grow very well by itself, so you don't really find it outside. You can cultivate it, but you don't really find it outside. Some people say that they find it, but really what they're finding is bear's head tooth.
Oh, interesting.
And
Oh,
so we
interesting.
decided we really wanted to pick one that you could grow and
Yeah.
you could find, and in our climate, that is bear's head tooth. So both of the schools initially chose lion's mane,
Right.
Yeah.
and then we did a second round, and they're like, ooh, lion's mane is very close, but that's not what we want. We
Yeah,
want bear's head tooth because
because-
they wanted the one that you could
Yeah.
find in the wild.
Yeah, that was really an extensive process, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you learned about process of chasing? Plus, you learned about mushrooms.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing.
Plus,
Yeah.
I learned from your presentation to the legislature that I watched on WCAX. So if anyone wants to watch it, it is out there. That the love of hardwoods, which is big in Vermont. The
Yes.
Bear's head tooth loves a hardwood, and it's foliage season. It comes out in foliage season. So there is that. Appears, was that intentional? Like, was that you thought, okay, these are really good characteristics because that speaks to Vermont, or just
I mean,
yeah.
it actually, I believe in the original when we were voting, it wasn't actually one of the things we were thinking about, but it just so happens to be that the bear's head tooth does come out during the foliage season when a lot of people travel down to Vermont to see the leaves, and they can also see the bear's head tooth on hardwood trees like maple or oak.
So that's like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's perfect. That's
It is.
Yeah.
to be a state symbol. So you sold it to the legislature. You sold it to the House,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How did that? What was that like going to the state house? Was
It was I was very nervous actually. Like it's the second time the second time I've been to the state house, the first time I've actually been inside. And I was like, wow, this place is so cool.
And they asked
great.
a lot of questions. I mean, the committee, they didn't take it easy on them. They asked
Oh,
them
did
many
they?
questions
Oh,
about like
good.
what was toxic and were there lookalikes and
Yeah.
could they find them. I mean, they had a lot of questions and the students did really well.
Yeah, I think they did their homework.
Very good.
Yeah.
So, you how many kids present? How many students presented? Not kids.
To the state house.
Yeah.
It was me and two other people from Compass, and then 3 kids from one of them elementary school.
Yeah, we
So
had
it was the 6 of us.
one 8th grader, 2 7th graders, 1 5th grader, and 2 2nd graders.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's shout out to the 2nd graders, because if I was them, I remember when I was in 2nd grade, and I would have been horrified to go on the
Really?
news. So
was that the little kid with the little bow tie?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah,
it was so cute.
yeah. So shout out to them.
That's great.
But you're not done though, right?
Yeah.
What's next?
On I believe next week, I go to the state house again
On April 9th.
to testify before the Senate. And then the next thing that happens after that is that it goes to the governor, and the governor said he actually said that he has no concerns and fully supports the bill.
Wow.
So-
But there's actually, you're kind of leaving out one step a little
They have
bit
to vote.
in that first
And, yeah.
you're presenting to the committee.
Yeah, and then the committee
needs
has to vote. Yeah.
Then they send it to the full Senate, which is 30 individuals. Then once the Senate supports it, then that's when it goes to the governor. So we need to have at least 16 votes in the full Senate in order for it to go to the governor. And I think our chances are good. This is not a very controversial.
No, I imagine this is not.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is- yes.
We did have a few people that voted no in the House, but mostly
Really?
people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just because they could, or
I think there were a couple different reasons, but I mean, I think one of the issues was some people said, "Oh, we have so many important things. Why are we wasting time on this?"
Oh.
And honestly, I mean, I've learned a lot in this process. The students have learned a lot in this process,
Yeah.
both about the legislative process and about engaging and about their voice matters. And so I think just on that level,
oh,
this is
100%.
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
we all have learned a lot about mushrooms and fungi and the environmental impact of fungi in the world, which is actually significant.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I presented to the Senate, I already went in and did an introduction to the Senate on the bill. About a week ago, and afterwards I had one of the members say, I had no idea that mushrooms played such an important role in our ecosystem. And I was like, well, this is an opportunity for Vermonters to learn about mushrooms. And I mean, they actually play a huge economic role, they play an environmental role, and they're really, the whole kingdom of fungi are missing in our state symbols. We have lots of plants, we have lots of animals, we even have like state fossils, but we don't have a single member of the fungi kingdom recognized.
Interesting.
And people come to Vermont like to go foraging.
They
I mean,
do.
foraging is something that really draws people here.
It does, and they
it's
don't give away their foraging spaces.
It's true. A lot of people are very secretive about it, and it's it's something healthy. It's a way. I mean, the Compass. Part of the reason I approached Compass is that they have a foraging culture. Their science teacher, who is someone I know very well, always happens to be my husband. Their science teacher always hires one or two foraging guides to take the students on walks in the fall to look at the what's able to be found in the woods
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
can cultivate, and then tell them about the wild foraging potluck that you guys had.
Oh yes, that. So we had a potluck in September, I think it was, so long ago.
Before the project started, actually.
Yeah.
This was just the science curriculum looking at mushrooms.
Yeah, so we had a potluck and we went up to the woods. I went up one day and then another day I had something else to do. And so we went to like look at mushrooms, and so we found like I forget what we found, but I know we found like upwards of like 7 different types of
Oh,
mushrooms.
really? Wow.
Just like in the woods, and some of them were like some of them were like growing out of the ground, and then some of them were growing off of trees or like off of logs, just like dead logs.
Mhm.
So
That's pretty cool.
So
And
then
then
they
did you
took-
bring them all back?
yeah,
and
we
clean them and
yeah
feed them?
we
and...
and then we cooked them and made them into different foods and stuff.
How'd they do?
Did you like them?
Yes, yes, a lot
That
of
was one
people
of the
like-
questions a lot of the committee members asked. They're like, what does bear's head tooth taste like?
Yeah. What does it taste like? That's my question too.
I don't think they found that one yet, but
Oh.
you want to tell them what did Nicholas say when one of the students reported on
She said it tastes like chicken
a crab.
or crab.
I mean, if you
Really?
look at
Wow.
bear's head
Interesting.
tooth, it's got long, thin strands,
Uh-huh.
so it's kind of like crab meat in that way.
Oh,
It's got
interesting.
strands, so
That makes
people make
sense.
sort of like a faux crab cake that
Uh-huh.
can be kind of crispy if you cook it. But I've also used it like in spaghetti, just cut up little pieces. And
That sounds great.
It's
It
tasty.
sounds very good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's savory. It's tasty.
Interesting.
So it seems like the process that you're going through is moving faster than I somehow thought the process moved.
Well, I mean, the legislative session, each session goes from approximately January to May. And if you're lucky, you introduce a bill and it moves through in one session.
Yeah.
I have to say you're lucky because often you're not lucky. About 80% of bills don't make it through. I mean, I've submitted, I think, probably 10 or 11 bills in my 4 years in the legislature, and this is the only one in its entirety that has moved all the way through. I've had pieces of bills that have moved through, but I have never had
Yeah.
a whole bill move through except for this year. And sometimes a bill will take more than 1 year. So like the last state symbol that was brought up in Vermont was a state vegetable, which is the gill feather turnip.
That
And,
was top bill.
and that
Oh.
was actually
Sorry,
started by
gill-feathered
a
turnip.
fourth grade class in the Wardsboro area. And it was started by a group of fourth graders, and then they went to fifth grade, and then they went to sixth grade, and finally it passed when they were
Wow.
in sixth grade. But it took 3 years, meaning it went through a whole biennium. And do you know why? Do you know why it didn't pass?
Somebody
Initially?
thought it should be something else.
There were arguments about it. It should be a carrot. It should be kale. Like
Oh,
people
that's
couldn't agree
funny.
what
But
was
then
the
we
right
wouldn't
vegetable.
have the gill
Feathered
feathered
Turnip
turnip
Festival.
festival.
We probably
I
wouldn't,
know.
right? And so
Yeah.
it was controversial.
Oh, that's
but what
funny.
we found was that
Yeah.
every person that we spoke to was 100% support. They're like, oh, that's a really good choice.
Yeah, like no one that I like talked to about it was like, oh no, it should be this or it should be this.
Yeah,
they were like, I think this is a great mushroom to represent Vermont.
Well, probably because y'all did your homework, right?
True.
You did. I mean, you really researched.
That is true.
You put intention into the.
And they thought very carefully
yeah.
about what they wanted and what they didn't want. And so it's like they looked at, like, they wanted all these things and we're like, check, 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 check. And we're like, okay. I mean, that left us with about 3 mushrooms. And this was the most distinctive one. And I think that was the final thing. Like, they could have picked an oyster mushroom, but an oyster mushroom is kind of common. And they wanted something distinctive. They're like, Vermont is distinctive. We need something distinctive. And
it's common and distinctive, too.
Yeah. And if you look at, like, a chart of, there are only 5 other states that have state mushrooms right now, and they're all sort of like the toadstool variety, and nothing, no offense, they're fine. But ours is much more unique looking.
Yeah, and I think it's also more indicative of the types of mushrooms you find in Vermont too, which are the ones that grow on trees or logs, or we don't have a ton of that.
I mean, we certainly could have chosen from. I mean, we looked at black trumpets, which are one that grows from the ground. We looked at lobsters. We looked at shrimp of the woods, hen of the woods, all grow from the ground. But actually, we did have at Compass, they didn't mention this, but at Wyndham Elementary School, when we were talking about what kind of qualities they wanted, they actually loved that this particular mushroom grew on trees, because they said Vermont has a lot of trees, and trees are important, so we only want a mushroom that grows on trees. So like Compass was willing to look at things that grew under the ground, but at Wyndham Elementary, they're like, we love trees. It has to be on trees. So we're like, okay. And so we went with it. We're like, okay, trees are good. We'll go with the trees.
Yeah, because like one of our state trees, the maple tree, it's actually the sugar maple, to be exact. And it actually, the bear's head tooth does grow on the sugar maple. So grows on most hardwood trees, I believe. Yeah.
It's interesting that there was such heated debate between the schools and the criteria, and
Well, I mean, for the most part, they really wanted.
It was like more like within our own school.
Oh,
like, it was less like between the schools.
Okay.
But in the end, they all ended up with the same choices.
Yeah.
So I mean, they ended up selecting the same way. It wasn't like one school had to talk the other one.
Right,
They
right.
both were like, oh, you know what?
But then
this
again,
really...
that's the democratic process,
is.
right?
Yeah.
And I keep going back to that. That's what you do every day. You lobby for what you believe in, and you lobby. So what is the bill? The bill number or bill?
So the bill is. Shoot, I should have looked it up before we came. I think it is 674, but I probably should look it up.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, there are over 800 bills that have been submitted, so it's not at the top of my head right now. But it is, I think it's 674. And I mean, the bill is to designate Hericium americanum, which is the Latin name, commonly known as bear's head tooth, as the Vermont state mushroom. And we actually wrote the bill so that it would be effective upon passage. So like in California, they actually just got a state mushroom last year. They chose one of the chanterelles as their state mushroom. But theirs wasn't going to go into effect until January of the next year. And so when we were drafting our bill, we're like, we're not waiting. Man, if the House approves it, if the Senate approves it, if the governor approves it, like the moment he signs that, we've got a state mushroom. So it could be by May. It could be by April even.
Yeah. That would really be nice if we could do it within that within your school year.
Yeah.
So that you could sort of feel that closure and the completion of the project.
Yeah. And there's been a lot. I mean, I honestly didn't expect it was going to take off in quite the way that I did. I mean, it was sort of an experiment to see like how would this work with the kids, to give them this experience. But then, I mean, it also was because I do love mushrooms, and I want us to have a state mushroom. So I wanted the mushroom, but I wanted the kids to pick. But I didn't expect all these people to come out from all these different directions who also care about mushrooms.
Oh, that's so
I mean,
cool.
I've had like the Secretary of Agriculture contacted me, the Director of Forestry contacted me. I've had these people from all these different scientific committees in Vermont that are really like extolling the virtues of mushrooms. I've had children's book authors. I mean, all these people are like, oh, this is so great. Teachers that grow mushrooms in their classroom. So just lots of people have said, this is going to be a great learning opportunity.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things that I've really appreciated, this children's author, her name is Melanie Kahn, and she wrote a book about her son growing up and being a child forager with her, called Mason Goes Mushrooming. And in her book, she took her book and traveled to a lot of different places and talked about mushrooms. And so she's gone to some states when they had a state mushroom come about. And so she just is so well connected to people in the mushroom world. And the mushroom world has been contacting me, saying how excited they are about this. And it's like there's this whole world out there that unless you come to know and appreciate it, you don't realize. Because a lot of people are kind of like, oh, mushrooms, who cares about mushrooms? I'm like, a lot of people. A lot of people
care about mushrooms. I mean, so many people care about mushrooms.
Yeah. I mean, it's really it's a healthy hobby. I mean, and that's one of the things that I particularly feel good about. Like, I didn't want to move forward. We could have done the Vermont State ice cream. We don't need a Vermont State ice cream, But mushrooms, if you get excited about mushrooms, it's going to get you into the woods. It's going to get you active. It maybe is going to get you involved in cooking. It's like lots of healthy things. And kids spend too much time on devices, and that's what the author of Mason Goes Mushrooming, that's part of what she says when she goes on her book tours is, kids spend an awful lot of time on devices. Reading a book is a healthy thing.
That's right.
And searching for mushrooms is also a healthy thing. That said, people should not ever pick and eat a mushroom unless they're 100% sure what they're identifying. Yeah. But that's also partly why we picked this mushroom. There's no toxic lookalikes.
I was just going to say,
even if you make a mistake, you might mistake it for a comb tooth fungus, which is like a related mushroom and is not toxic. So there's nothing that you could mistake that would
like you might say, oh, there's a bear's head tooth, but it's a comb tooth mushroom. Doesn't matter.
If you harvest it and cook it, it's going to be fine either way.
Like you won't die.
Yeah, but it is important. People should never pick and harvest and cook mushrooms unless they're 100% sure. They really should do some thorough education. And like that's with Compass. They bring these foraging guides. It's not like they're just randomly having students pick mushrooms in the wood and cooking them. It takes a while before you're really confident, and that's important.
Is there if everything passes, do you receive some kind of plaque or acknowledgement that you brought? How does that you brought it into the bill, or some kind of? I would think that the State House would take advantage of this very good PR opportunity.
Sometimes they do a public signing with like a certificate, and then like the governor apparently will sign it with multiple pens.
So you get a pen for signing.
A plaque, I don't think so.
I also
don't think they do that with every bill.
Right, I get that, but I mean, this is such a. There's so many. It's like a drop of water that has ripple affected to so many things. Yeah. So many opportunities for learning. So many opportunities for making even the I don't know, I want to say John Doe on the street really understand the legislative process. I mean, you guys have been here, you and have come before, and we've talked about how people really don't fully understand the legislative process. And here's some from beginning to end on something that people can relate to, right?
Yeah.
Like it isn't a bill on, a bill that has many, many parts to it. So
it's just the one thing.
It's the one thing. It's the state mushroom. And it's cut and dried, but it goes through everything you had to go through. Yeah. Even your decision process with which one, what's the criteria, what do we want to have, how do we want to do this? Yeah. How you probably had some thoughts on how you wanted to present it to them. Like, how are we going to sell this to them?
They worked very carefully on that. They divided up different topics in terms of making sure they covered all the different aspects. And
so how has this affected your life and your growth as far as you're a public speaker, you've been on TV, you've been to the legislature, you're probably going to see
What did the committee ask you, Mustapha?
Yeah.
At the end of your presentation, do you remember what you were asked?
I actually don't.
Oh, they said, have you ever considered running for office?
Yeah.
Really good.
Awesome. Do you think you have a future in legislature?
I don't know, honestly. I have no idea. This is just the start of my life,
Perfect.
The second grader that testified that wore a bow tie did say he would like to be president.
I'm not surprised at that. I truly
We do have some political aspirations coming out of this project already.
Okay, that's good.
So we are down to about a minute.
Okay.
I will say, if you would like to see the second grader, if you would like to see the clips, they're on the WCAX website to see the kids actually testifying to what would have been the House committee. Yeah. So just to reiterate, is there anything that the public can do to be supportive of the bills, or it all goes to legislature?
Well, I would say if anybody is interested in this and wants to support it, contact your senator at this point, because that is the only other level that's going to be voted on. So if you want to contact your senators and say, I love the idea of a state mushroom, please support this, even a sentence or two could make a difference.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Mustapha, thank you for coming on.
great.
It was very educational to me. Thank you. And that's it for this week. We'll see you next week on the feed.
Bye,
Bye,
community.
community. Excellent job.
Good job.
Yes.
That's cool. It's funny because I was thinking
Wonderful.
about
Sports, arts,